take back what I said, she asked my retainer. Does that answer your questions? Okay, Albedo, start the next phase as we discussed when I contacted you. While the men were rolling their eyes in shock, Albedo stood up and moved toward them. Oh, there was one question I forgot to answer. My real name isn't T. Momon, but ain't not that there's any need for you to know that. Albedo snickered adorably at the men. Their perplexity was plain on their faces, but the laugh was ice cold. How then, Albedo, dispose of them? Capture one? No, in case we need a spare, let us get two. I already cast jamming, so you don't have to worry about them communicating with anyone via magic. While Igvaj and the others were shocked at his low voice betraying no emotion, he gave further orders. Take the bodies to Nazareth. With specimens this strong, we can experiment to see if they can be a medium for creating upper-tier undead. Understood. Albedo swung her bardich lightly through the air. There was no murderous intent in the action, no enmity. Obviously, there wasn't. He being told to sever the heads of lower life-form humans was no different to Albedo than being told to cut the tops off some daikon radishes. If Aints hadn't been there, she probably wouldn't have even swung through the air once to confirm that her movements were all right. Igvaj and the others didn't understand what was going on, but they sensed the danger they were in and got into attack stances. Aints shrugged in response to their shocked stares. Sorry, I misspoke back at the guild. It should have been not if you come, you'll die, but if you come, I'll kill you. He sentenced them to death. I warned you, but you didn't listen. This is the result of your choice. Just accept it. Igvaj and his team moved to retreat. They chose to flee instead of trying to gesture and communicate because they were acutely aware of the gap in fighting power that existed between them. They chose to scatter instead of move as one. This gave them a higher chance for survival. Albedo seemed caught off guard by that. She flew into action a moment later. Even though her physical strength was far superior to Aints', cutting down opponents who had scattered in a forest was a bit of a hassle. She caught up to her first choice in an instant. She used a skill to trap and stun him. Albedo's keen sense of hearing picked up metallic sounds. These sounds mingled with the sound of the human crumpling to the ground, but even as the sounds faded away, she couldn't pinpoint where they were coming from. The trees obstructed her vision. Also, the only sound adventurers wearing no metal armor made was the parting of vegetation underfoot. Albedo was frustrated by her lack of classes like thief or ranger. She shook her head thinking, good grief. She gave orders. Mayor, take care of two of them. Oh right, I'll dispose of the man who was rude to Lord Aints. Igvaj ran. He'd known Momon was a greater adventurer than himself, since back at the guild he'd just frantically denied it. But when he saw the imposing figure of the magical beast, he was riding the wise king of the forest, a legend passed down since long ago. He had to acknowledge the fact, whether he liked it or not. To bend such a beast to his will, he had to be more powerful than a mithril plate. When Igvaj learned that everything said in that room hadn't been a bluff, he swelled with anger. He thought, I don't know what country's celebrity you are, but don't bother us. If you want information, I'll give it to you, so just sit quietly over there. He saw it as Momon trespassing on his territory. He couldn't think of anything, except how awful it felt to have a dream to repeat the cycle of hellish training, risking their lives adventuring, gradually crawling up the ladder, only to have someone show up and skip a bunch of rungs. Given the opportunity, he wanted to take down Aints. He would spread bad rumors to lower Momon's reputation. In fact, that was his purpose for coming on this trip. That's why, when Momon's friend in black armor appeared, and Momon declared he was going to kill them, he'd been able to retreat without hesitation. Despite his fear, he moved swiftly. This was driven by the urge to deliver unfavorable information about Momon. No, Aints to the guild. That's what you get. He was going to live, and he'd tell everyone what Aints did, that bastard. He didn't know yet whether Aints was in cahoots with the vampire, but he could still spin the story that way. Despite the chance that a horrible weapon could be swung behind him at any second, despite being scared for his life, he couldn't hold back his emotions and smirked. He wasn't concerned for his teammates' safety. It was all the better if they bought him time to escape alive. I'll be the best. I'll get orichalcum and then adamantite plates and be called a hero. He didn't need any tough guys except himself. Friends were just stepping stones for him to reach the top. He would become a hero equal to one of the 13 heroes who saved the world. That was Igvaj's dream. He had it since he was a kid, listening to the poet who came to his village to recite the heroic sagas. Now this guy was messing it up. He was threatening to surpass him and his team, and it was even more unforgivable because the guy was just doing it in his spare time. He ran and ran and ran. The fact that he could flee through the forest without running out of breath was a sign that he was a mithril rank adventurer. However, Igvaj felt a ripple go through his mind, a fairly big one. Where am I? I took a detour because they might have ambushed me near the place where we left the horses, so According to his senses, he was on course. His sense of direction told him so, but his sixth sense said differently. Even in a forest he'd come to for the first time, he shouldn't have been lost, but for some reason he didn't know where he was. Maybe he was just imagining things, that's what he decided. But he didn't really feel like he was imagining things. He might not have liked it, but he had to admit it. Lost me, a forest stalker. How stupid. Igvaj had acquired classes specialized for operating in the outdoors. In a way, the forest was like his backyard. But in this place, he was seized by the strange feeling he stepped into a predator's mouth. It's like a maze. Anxiety and impatience welled up inside him from the sudden change in what should have been a familiar forest. When it happened, he heard a quiet rustling. Recalling the executioner in black, he whipped around to face the direction the noise had come from. He saw a child peering at him from behind a tree. It was a dark elf, a relative of the elves. They were humanoids who lived deep in the forest. What was it doing here? The large dark elf settlement was supposedly farther south, in the unexplored area deep in the woodlands. Dark elves usually settled far from human civilization. That was one big difference between them and elves who traded with humans. It was very strange for a dark elf, and a child at that, to be all the way out here. As Igvaj was wondering about that, the dark elf nervously showed itself. Was it a girl? The clothing was a girl's. The fear on her extremely well-shaped face triggered his sadistic streak. The idea that she was with Momon did cross his mind, but her attitude was so different from the others that he dismissed the idea with a laugh. There was no way. More importantly, if she was a dark elf who lived in this forest, she might know a safe route out. If nothing else, if the black armor person showed up, he could use her to distract them. Having calculated that, he stepped forward. He intended to threaten her into doing what he wanted. Hey, the dark elf jumped at his voice. He made it deep and menacing on purpose. Sorry. Igvaj grinned at the timid figure. Things seemed like they would proceed smoothly. You don't have to apologize. I just want to ask you something. Come here. Sorry. Igvaj couldn't understand why the dark elf girl was apologizing. But before the question could appear in his mind, she waved a staff. It looked like it was made of ebony. Plants became chains and restrained him. His whole body shuddered in shock. Was he, a mithril rank adventurer, unable to resist this brat's spell? He put all his strength into escaping the bonds, but he couldn't budge. His chest tight with panic, he barked a bluff with all his might. You little bitch. If you don't cancel at this instant, I am gonna kill you. Arg. With her timid eyes lowered, the dark elf walked in front of him. That was when Igvaj noticed the splendid outfit she was wearing. Her clothing and armor were too extravagant. Each piece was more magnificent than anything he'd ever touched. And her eyes, he remembered something an elf he knew had once said. But before the thought was fully formed, a shadow fell over him. The girl was holding the staff up high. She still looked scared, but there was no emotion in her eyes. She didn't feel anything about what she was about to do to him. It was like her fear was just an act someone had told her to put on. The image of the black armored figure overlapped with this girl in his mind. Wait a minute. What do you think you're doing? Albedo arrived at the exact moment Mayor's staff came down on the man's head. The helmet crushed, then the man's skull underneath it dented, forcing his eyeballs to squirt out. His head was completely demolished like a watermelon being split on the beach during summer. Nice work. Albedo. I'm all done. Is this good enough? Albedo, who removed her helmet, smiled down at Mare. He was trembling a bit as he looked up at her. It's perfect. That was maybe a bit of a messy way to kill someone, but it got the job done. Lord Aints will praise you too. Really? Looking from the happily smiling dark elf to the corpse, Albedo asked, what did you do with the other one? I already killed him. The body is behind that tree. Okay, perfect. Then Mare, can you take those bodies back to Nazarick for me? Understood. Albedo smiled again at the boy holding his bloody staff and nodding. He was such a good, honest kid, if only he could be a little more proud of himself. Lord Aints, we finished. Albedo returned carrying her helmet under her arm, and Aints nodded emphatically at that first thing she said. Good work. Now no one would see Sholtia. He made his armor vanish, and enjoying the resulting sense of freedom, asked her, and the plan for collecting the bodies? I already gave the order to Mare, and he's carrying them back for us. Oh, then that solves that. Too bad they got killed by the vampire, but we survivors have to forge on. Understood. And then what will you do about that thing clutching the hem of your cape? When Aints looked, he found that Hamusuk was unobtrusively holding on, although he couldn't understand how that worked when she was so huge. Her eyes were clearly teary, and her hairs were standing on end in fear. Of course, she was looking at Albedo. This is basically like my pet. I named her Hamusuk. What? You gave this thing the position anyone in Nazarick would yearn for? Huh, Hamusuk, this is my loyal retainer and the manager of my castle, the great tomb of Nazarick, Albedo your superior. Greet her. As my master introduced me, I am Hamusuk that I am. I look forward to working with you that I do, Mistress Albedo. Nice to meet you, Hamusuk. Okay, that's it for formalities. From here on out, it'll be Albedo and me. Narbarl, take Hamusuk, and return to Nazarick with Mare. Hamusuk, be a little careful with that thing in your mouth. Yes, sir, Narbarl replied briskly. Then Hamusuk, mumbling with the intelligent item rolling around in her mouth, said, Understood, master, that it is. But this thing is a little noisy, that it is. There is something more important, though. You in my mouth, quiet down in there that you do. I have a question, Mistress Narbarl. Will I be okay, I want to get eaten, If you ray Lord Aints' pet, no one will eat you without his permission. I'll let everyone know, so you don't need to worry about it. Aints' face didn't move, but he smiled. It appeared the two of them had grown closer due to his leaving them alone in Rantle. Okay, then let us go, Albedo. Yes, sir. Narbarl and Hamusuk saw Aints off as he headed toward Sholtia's location with Albedo. By the way, Lord Aints, I remembered what we were saying about those men's corpses in the throne room. It made me wonder if it was okay that we didn't collect the bodies of the people you killed last night. That he was going to repeat what he said the previous night. We needed to turn them in as ringleaders of the disturbance, but swallowed his words when Albedo continued. During their fight with you, they might have gleaned some information. Isn't it dangerous not to collect the bodies, considering there is magic to raise the dead? Did you have a special reason for leaving them? He stopped breathing. Well, no, he'd never been breathing. Albedo had hit that nail on the head. This is bad. In this world, there was magic that could bring the dead back to life. In other words, it was possible to get clearer and more detailed information out of them that an autopsy would provide. Aints recalled that night. His true identity, Nazarick's name, Narbarl's abilities, that man and woman knew all of it. The woman in particular was especially dangerous. This was a failure too serious to sweep under the rug with an oops. It was fatal. Hopefully, there wasn't anyone around who could use resurrection magic. But according to the information they'd gotten out of the sunlit scripture, there were a few in the slain theocracy. There was also a high probability adamantite adventurers were capable of employing it. It was also possible that the country's leadership secretly had someone on hand for the job. So, if the higher-ups in Rantle decided these people had crucial information, they would be making preparations to use resurrection magic. If what those people had been trying to do could have put Rantle in a precarious situation, the city officials would surely try to get information out of them. Aints' heart, which shouldn't have even existed, was beating so hard he practically felt he could hear it. What should he do? That was obvious. They needed to seize the corpses now, but who would he send? At the time, he'd ordered Narbarl to leave the bodies there. Was exposing that as a mistake the right choice? No, he should avoid that. He wanted to avoid saying anything that could further reduce loyalty while it was still unclear why Sholtia had rebelled. He thought it best not to rush into giving orders. Aints had the feeling he knew why the managers at work never wanted to admit their mistakes. He gave his conclusion, practically praying, "It's as you say, but I had a special reason for leaving them. Don't worry, I have everything under control besides Sholtia." Oh. I would expect nothing less, Lord Aints. So you already considered the matter I was thinking of, huh? Please excuse me for my insolence. By the way, why don't you ever use resurrection magic, Lord Aints? I was thinking you would use it on all the dead humans to gather intelligence. Huh, caught by surprise, he made a dumb-sounding noise. Didn't I tell you? Do you know about Demiurge's healing experiments? Yes. The one where he cuts off all 4 limbs and then casts healing magic on them? Yes. So here's the next question. Do you know where you cast resurrection magic? On the corpse? No, I don't think so. Aints and Albedo both ruminated on that until Albedo's face suddenly brightened. Oh, I was wrong. It's as you said, Lord Aints, not the corpse but the soul. That's right. In Demiurge's experiments, the severed limbs vanished and then grew out of the body. So what happens to the body when you cast resurrection magic on the soul? In Yggdrasil, there were 4 outcomes when casting resurrection magic on someone, which also dealt the penalty of lost XP. The first was that they would revive on the spot. The second option was that they would revive at the entrance to the dungeon or wherever. The third option was that they would revive in a safe town nearby. And the fourth option was that they would revive at their designated home point, such as their guild's headquarters. So what would happen when resurrection magic was cast in this world? Aints was most worried about the fourth version, the home point revival. If Nigon's home point was inside the slain theocracy, it would be like idiotically doing his enemy a favor by bringing him back to life and sending him home armed with intelligence. That's why they hadn't been able to do resurrection experiments, although refraining had some negative consequences for them as well. I see, so that's why. That is definitely something to be careful about. I would expect nothing less, Lord Aints. I am impressed by your wise inferences. As Albedo bowed her head, sighing in admiration, Aints quickly shook his head. It's fine, really, but we do need to do those experiments sometime. Okay, let us cheer up now. Aints walked farther into the forest with Albedo guiding him. They reached a clearing deep in the forest. Standing in that pastoral setting was a crimson suit of armor that looked out of place. Sparkling in the sun, it almost seemed like a hallucination. But the smell of fresh blood ruined that illusion. It was Sholtia. She hadn't changed a bit from when they'd seen her using the crystal monitor. They couldn't even detect any sign that she'd moved. Aints was momentarily assailed by the illusion that he was still staring at that screen, but this was real, the raw scent of spraying blood. Aints breathed in and out. Of course, his body couldn't actually breathe, so he just pretended, or he approached things as if he were breathing. Sholtia, he called out to her, not in a pathetic, quietly hoarse voice, but one that Aints thought was filled with gravity, but there was no reply. Before calling out again, Aints took a good look at her. She wasn't ignoring him. Her wide-open crimson eyes were vacant. It was hard to imagine she was conscious. Upon seeing Sholtia, Albedo's anger flared up. Sholtia, you have no excuse. You dare be so rude to our master. Albedo had put one foot forward, but Aints held her back with his harsh tone. Normally, Aints would almost never take that attitude with the NPCs his guildmates created. But this time, he lost control of himself. He was that shocked by Sholtia's state. Could this be? Is it possible? I can't believe it. A scene he'd witnessed once overlapped with the way Sholtia looked now. It disturbed him deeply. Just at that moment, his emotions stabilized. He calmly concluded that this possibility was the most likely. Aints began talking to Albedo. By telling someone else, maybe he would be able to digest it himself. Now we know for sure. Sholtia is currently under mind control. Is it due to the reason you mentioned in the throne room? That I don't know. When we were gathering information from the sunlit scripture captives, it was similar. This is definitely the result of mind control. There is still the question of why it worked on Sholtia, since she is undead, but it must be something special, unique to this world. Aints crossed his arms and looked hard at her as she remained standing stock still. Someone put her under mind control, but something must have happened before they could give her orders. Perhaps they defeated each other at the same time, so her orders are blank. That is just a guess, though. But if we get into point-blank range or attack, she may take defensive action. For someone with an alignment that leans toward evil, that generally means an attack. Don't approach her carelessly. Understood. But that means we can just restrain her by force and take her back to Nazareth. Spending time here is fine if the one mind controlling her is dead, but if they are still alive, It could be dangerous to linger, you ray exactly right. How Sholtia was put under mind control was a mystery.